today we are checking out a video from Jimmy the Giant on a subject that we know a little thing about.
Yeah,
Is
I would. Yeah, I would say so.
the pathetic death of comedy movies. Now, what qualifies us for that is, well, he's a lot more qualified than me. Let's just put that out there. And we on our Patreon every Saturday of the month, the first and third, we do movie reactions,
man.
full movies. If you're interested in that kind of thing and voting on them, link is down in the description.
And a lot of times we remember, guys, we started that whole movie tier because this guy right here hasn't seen any movies.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of movies that I have not seen until now. Like now I've seen Indiana Jones. I saw Police Academy. I've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder.
Oh my God.
Blazing Saddles, things like that. And
yeah.
And also, British indie movies as well.
Yes.
And but this, not only is Jimmy the Giant a great storyteller and good at putting these types of videos together, but it's also a subject that we are kind of qualified to talk about. He's more qualified to talk about. I'm kind of qualified to talk about.
I say let's dive into it. Let's see how he presents this. I think this is a good conversation starter for sure. I mean, are we going to solve anything? Probably not.
No.
but hey,
it'll be a nice spirited conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
3, 2, 1.
Growing up, Friday night was the best night of the week. My father would escort me to Blockbusters where I'd pick out a Will Ferrell film. I'd grab a bag of sweets, maybe a 7-Up, and I was about to have a crazy night.
So you actually wrote that one girl looked like she was hurting for a squirtin'?
Yeah, hurting for a squirtin'. I wrote that.
In the 2000s, it felt like every single week there was a brand new iconic comedy film. Borat, Anchorman, Step Brothers. These films would create these kind of cultural memes.
Did we just become best friends? Yep!
Maybe you'd dress up as the characters for Halloween. But for some strange reason, in the last 7 or so years, comedy films have just disappeared. And today we're going to answer the question, why? Cancel culture. If you enjoyed this...
Okay, video's done.
Yeah.
Good,
thank y'all.
good
Subscribe.
Video. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Golly.
But yeah, Blockbuster, man, that was
prime.
That was the move.
That was
the
prime.
move.
If you lived during that era, you've made it through a lot.
Yeah,
you've made it through a lot, man.
Yeah. And he described it perfectly. On Friday night, a new movie that may have been in theaters a couple months ago is available to rent. And
oh man, what a feeling! And when it was in stock, when you could rent it, I was like, you just won the lottery.
Yeah, can't do that no more.
Nope.
Have just disappeared. And today we're going to answer the question, why? Cancel culture. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe. Obviously, I'm just playing. There's much more to it than that. And today we're going to explore the death of the comedy film.
What are you doing? I'm burying you.
I'm alive! I'm alive!
So let's start with the history of comedy. Comedy was first discovered in 1886. That, right there, was a joke. Comedy is filled with jokes. That's the point. We make each other laugh. We reflect on life, society, hardships, funny things. We come together and share laughter. As early as the Greeks, there were comedy plays, and of course, you had your boy Shakespeare, who would write banger after banger, redefining the English language, all whilst putting a little smile on your face. And then by the late 80s...
Wait, I thought Abraham Lincoln invented comedy.
I think so.
He's the one who said that don't believe everything you say on the internet, right?
Yeah, 100%. 1,000,000%. That was after he was a renowned. Yeah, everyone knows he was a renowned vampire hunter. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, this is all facts. You could Google it.
Yep.
Off the banger, redefining the English language, all whilst putting a little smile on your face. And then by the late 1800s to early 1900s, there would be the big screen, cinema. Silent. It was silent films. You weren't allowed to make noise. It was quiet. There was no technology to record audio. And so one of the best things that you could translate with no audio was physical slapstick comedy. You had a man like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd. These people had incredible physical comedy. Their movement was amazing. Many people point to people like Buster Keaton as the origins of the sport of parkour. But then into the mid-1900s...
Right, because originally Jimmy the Giant, he was big into parkour. That was the main thing before he turned into, a social commentator.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's... I couldn't let that pass.
All right.
Yeah.
point to people like Buster Keaton as the origins of the sport of parkour. But then into the mid-1900s, there would be the introduction of sound.
We think too much and feel too little.
Sound now allowed people to drop witty, zingy one-liners, much like the great joke that I delivered at the start of the video. As the different genres would come along, you'd have satire, parody, dark comedy, blockbusters, teen comedies, rom-coms, zom-coms, john-coms. Oh, bloody hell. Sorry about that. Comedy as a genre has pretty much always been a dominant genre of film. Don't just take my word for it. I have the graphs to prove it. This graph right here shows us from 1943 to 2021 what the top grossing films genres were. And since the very beginning of this graph, comedy has always dominated. No matter what the era, what the world was going through, if people were being blown up in war, if there was the fear that the communists were going to take over, or that we were going to be decimated by nuclear bombs, people still like to laugh. Some would say that comedy was an escapism from reality during hard times. Sometimes comedy was a mirror to reflect some of the ills of society, a vessel for social critique. And some would say comedy would say the things that no one else was allowed to say. It was the jester who could insult the king to his face. And if we look at the history, the idea of comedy just completely dying seems impossible. It'd be like me saying water's gone out of fashion. Stop drinking your water. Drink some Prime, you pussy.
A potential scandal with the Buffalo PD surfaced today when the mayor
And it seemed as though up until recently, comedy films were just getting bigger and bigger. Where going by the statistics we looked at earlier, the comedy film was the biggest genre of movie in the 90s. I mean, there was so many comedies, a lot of them shit, to be honest.
Didn't your mothers ever tell you not to play with guns?
But some of them were iconic.
Now you have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky?
And it was very often that it would be very particular actors and comedians that would be the main star of the successful comedy films. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was known for his like maniac energy. He was crazy and strange, bombastic. And then you had your boy Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler was nothing like Jim Carrey. He was more laid back. He had sort of this juvenile, childish sense of humor. But Adam Sandler had a little something else. You know, he had a heart. There were moments where he could really tug on your heartstrings. You know, he'd make you laugh one minute, then he'd make you cry the next. And so with the stage set, in steps my favorite era of comedy films, the 2000s. Before we continue with this video, I want to...
All right, before he gets into his ad, yeah. So it's just so much nostalgia that's just being on this video right now. And he's talking about it like it's just making me miss that era.
Yeah, it's I feel like it just didn't need to be explained then that a joke was a joke, or you know, it's satire. You know, people were a little less into their feelings and people were just ready to laugh more.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say people were still in their feelings then, but the extremists on both sides didn't have a megaphone. Now they have a megaphone with social media. And I feel like that's part of what killed it. I mean, you may talk about this a little bit later, but I'm with you. And like, that's why a lot of the comedy is always kind of been buried, like,
yeah, I've always wondered that. Like, why can't they've never won awards. Comedies never get the acclaimed awards, whatever the fuck those mean. You know, like they just don't.
Yeah, because they're for every person. They're for everyone. Everyone wants to laugh. Everyone needs to laugh.
Yeah. That's just it's yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I want to see what he says. I want to see, because so far I'm tracking with what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I am McLovin.
For 400 years, that word has kept us down.
What the
The 2000s, man. The 2000s was a beautiful era. It was a great time. It was the best time to be alive. Everyone was having fun. We're all happy. Music was cheesy. People were joking, having fun. 9/11 did happen. It wasn't so good. The wars, the financial crash. But we had good comedy films. And there was just so many memorable films in this era. Like, as I mentioned, Step Brothers, Borat, Anchorman, Blades of Glory. Hangover, 40-Year-Old Virgin. These were belly laugh bangers, chart-topping chucklers. In this era, it honestly felt like every few weeks there was a comedy film that would come out and just shape and redefine this era, much like that genre-defining joke that I delivered at the start of the video. In all of this genre, there would be one man that would dominate it all, and that was Will Ferrell.
Oh, yeah.
Ferrell?
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell was
Will Ferrell!
The Will Ferrell movie basically became its own genre in its own regard. The boy just had the golden touch. If you wanted to sell something in the 2000s, either put a picture of boobs, bum, or Will Ferrell's face on it. He just had this strange comedy where he was like a child in a grown 40-year-old man's body. He'd play these absurd, ridiculous characters all the while keeping a very straight, serious face. From Anchorman to Elf, Step Brothers, Talladega Nights, and Old School, these films will be remembered as some of the best of the 2000s.
Will Ferrell is Ron Burgundy.
Who's that handsome devil?
And so I want to kind of analyze what made...
I love me a good Will Ferrell movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Those are just nostalgic, you know?
yeah. And I am so glad that we saw Anchorman because of that movie tier that we talked about at the beginning of the video before Jimmy told his era-defining joke.
100%. Like he needs to go on tour. But yeah, you know another thing is it's like SNL shaped a lot of these guys.
Yeah, a lot of them came up through SNL.
And I would say the schooling that they've had, I would maybe that's where the cause of it all is, because I still feel like, I don't know. I'm just saying, look, Adam Sandler, you have, oh my God, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, like, guys, you could name them. There's tons of SNL alumni that have made amazingly hilarious, gut-busting movies.
Yeah, and there's no real need for thought to a lot of them. Funny is funny.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ferrell is Ron Burgundy.
Who's that handsome devil?
And so I want to kind of analyze what makes these comedy films iconic, and this iconicness that existed then but doesn't really exist now. Firstly, I would say there were memes. They weren't called memes back then, but they were like these memorable jokes, these one-liners that people would then use and say in the real world. Step Brothers had Boats and Hoes. Did We Just Become Best Friends? So Many Activities. Borat had High Five, Great Success. And then Zoolander had the blue still face. On top of memes, there were also these like hilarious standout scenes.
Wait, you changed your name to McLovin?
Hangover with the blackjack scene where Alan became Rain Man, and Anchorman where they had the big fight scene. As well, there were very notable and defined characters that often dressed in a funny way. This style of dressing would become a costume that many would wear at Halloween. And so in the 2000s, things were going well. Maybe just a little too well.
We were talking today, or yesterday rather, with Russell Peters about when was the last time you saw a good comedy movie, and can you make a good comedy movie anymore?
Many say that 2014 was the last year of big blockbuster comedies, the year that comedy died. And that last iconic comedy film being 22 Jump Street, a sequel of 21 Jump Street, which was a kind of remake of an old TV show. 22 Jump Street.
Okay, never seen these. These are going over my head. Please, if you sign up for the Patreon, please comment them in the Patreon. That way I know to put them up in the polls. That way they get voted for.
Oh my God, but I agree with him. Like 22 Jump Street, that 21 and 22 Jump Street were they brought me back to, like, they felt nostalgic in their comedy, like their writing, you know.
Right.
However old, I don't know how old this video is, but
let's see, it is a year ago.
Okay.
August 27th, 2023. It's about a year old at this point.
And I would say this, and I want to put this out there early. I don't know if he's going to touch on it. The best comedy movie that has been made recently, or a couple of movies, has been Deadpool. None. I love Deadpool because of the comedy.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't seen too many of that universe, and I've seen Deadpool 1 and 2 and laughed my ass off.
Yeah. So I haven't seen. Oh, I can't wait for the third one. I haven't seen it, guys. Just no time. But anyway, I would say I would fight for that movie as being those movies, Deadpool movies, as being like pure old school comedy.
Oh
You
yeah.
know. But anyway, all right. I think I'm getting ahead of the video, so my bad.
Hey, don't worry about it.
21 Jump Street, which was a kind of remake of an old TV show. 22 Jump Street had all of the key components of what I said made an iconic comedy film earlier. It had the memey one-liner with
My name is Jeff.
as well, it had the memorable scenes like the slam poetry scene and the sequel end credit sequence. And like after this film, it becomes really difficult to point to an iconic comedy film, one that no one would argue is a legendary comedy film. And that's not to say that there hasn't been good comedies or even great comedies, but none of these films really permeated society in the same way that something like 22 Jump Street did, or the countless other films in the last 20 years prior. It seemed as though, for whatever reason, comedy had just died, and I got stats to prove it. As you can see, the yellow and the light orange are like comedy and rom-coms. Comedy films seem to have majorly fallen out of like the top performing films. In fact, only 3 years were they in the top 10, and that was 2010, 2012, and 2013. And there are a bunch of other stats and articles showing this decline. I'm not the only person who's noticed it. And so you might be wondering, why did it die?
Every studio would put out several comedies every year, and there was like 45 or 46 comedies in the theaters every year. And then now, last year, there was like 6 or 7.
This is very complex, and it isn't just cancel culture. That's a part of it we'll get into, but there are many different factors that all play together. Firstly, we'll start off with the rise of the superhero film. In 2008, Iron Man was released, and now every single film is a superhero film. But it was all well and good in the beginning because other genres could exist, but then around about 2016, superhero films did something particular. They became self-aware.
You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed. This guy's got the right idea. He wore the brown pants. Cue the music.
Look at me, guys. I'm going to comment on the fact that superhero films are kind of corny, but I'm going to do it to the camera. Look how funny that is. So obviously you had the film Deadpool with the character who was kind of self-aware. You know, it was like a tongue-in-cheek approach to a superhero film. And so many other superhero films came along and did the exact same kind of format and basically swallowed up comedy. Things like Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor 3. And even you would see some of these famous comedy actors move into superhero films. You had Paul Rudd, Chris Pratt, Ryan Reynolds. And that's because, whether you like it or not, superhero films and animation films are money printers. Pretty much, if you dig up some shit comic book that no one in its time read and just pump millions and millions of dollars into it, you got a blockbuster hit. As well, for many of the comedy stars of the 2000s and 2010s, they often wanted to expand their career. Like, only so long do you want to be a silly, goofy comedy actor. Sometimes you want to prove that you got depth and range. Laughter, that's below me. So more
That's why we have 125,000 subscriber channel. And what's all those ones in the description besides Embrace the Globe? Who's like, they haven't cracked more than 3K. That's what happens when you try and expand out.
Yep.
Oh well.
Yep. It's tough. It's tough, you know, when you're known for that just one thing. You know, it's
right.
Great, and it's a curse.
Yeah. You don't want to be seen as a one-trick pony, but at the same time, maybe, I don't know, maybe get out of your system.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but you know what though? I'm gonna battle him because I think I'm gonna have to battle him. Deadpool is a self-aware character. Period.
Right.
Even in the comics, he is self-aware. That's what differentiated him from the superhero movies. But I do agree that the superhero movies started bringing in a lot of humor, and I would say, like he said, swallowed up that genre of like, let's go see a funny superhero movie. Like Guardians of the Galaxy was absolutely hilarious, as well as the Thor, was it Ragnarok or Thor 3, whatever that is. But yeah, that was a pretty funny movie. So but I'm gonna agree with him on that. That superhero movies kind of added comedic elements to them.
Yeah. The one reason I really haven't gotten into superhero movies is because I just feel like I'm gonna go in at the wrong place. of where am I supposed where am I supposed to go in? And how do I consult with the people who have nerded out about them and
Oh
to
man,
know where to
that
start?
that is a rabbit hole and a half. I would say stick with just Iron Man, the first one, and
I've
then
seen
go
that.
from there.
Yeah, I've seen the first Iron Man.
And then just go from there. Because if you ask the nerd squad, and I mean that with all respect, because at times I do tend to be part of the nerd squad.
Yes, you do.
Like they'll tell you, you got to read the comic books. Like, no, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that or lore or nothing like that. Let me get let me just let's say this is my first introduction, and I would say for MCU, like Iron Man, go there.
Start with Iron Man,
and then just branch out. And they have timelines that are pretty all right. X-Men, someone riddle me that. What the fuck? I can't wrap my head around the X-Men timeline. Doesn't make sense. I gave up on that. I watch Wolverine movies, which I guess you could say is Marvel, like X-Men. Whatever. They're just all over the place with too many different. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I saw like one Wolverine movie. I can't tell you which one it was.
Yeah.
And unrelated, but kind of related, I never read any of the Harry Potter books, but I've seen all the movies. And in fact, I brought this up to a British friend, someone I was talking to at the time, and they were flabbergasted that I didn't read the books. I'm like, with what time and with what money?
Yeah, true. Very true. Like for me, I read the Lord of the Rings books first. And after I was done with that, when the Harry Potter books flooded the US market, right? I was already chasing girls in high school.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like over it. I found a different like path. So I didn't read the books. And I was like, I didn't read the books. Everyone's like, you gotta read the books to understand the movie. I was like, that's a lot of time I don't have.
Yeah. And I'll be damned if I try and fit comic books into that as well. With all due respect, not shitting on anybody that collects comic books. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But it's not, from what you're saying, it's not our thing.
No, I would say that people use that as an escape, right? I used Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
That was my escape. But people use comic books as an escape, or maybe their older brothers introduced them to comic books, or you know what I mean? Like it's like passed down.
Right. And my thing was albums and playing guitar. So we all have our thing. So
So death of comedy movies. I would have to say I'm gonna agree with him that superhero movies kind of took that mantle of comedy-ish to get as much money as possible.
Yeah, I think that tracks.
Want to prove that you got depth and range. Laughter, that's below me. So more tamer superhero films and animation films started to really win over, especially in that family market, as well as like remakes of old classic hits. A lot of the time it comes down to franchises. Tried and tested characters that were popular at some point in the past tend to perform well because audiences trust that they liked it once, they're probably going to like it again. But most importantly, the most important part of why comedy films died is mainly international markets. I just want to take a quick second and remind you guys that we have just dropped the Afters podcast. I'm so proud of this. Oh yeah, Oppenheimer just felt like it was just too convoluted. Pretentious. It almost felt like a parody of a Christopher Nolan film. It's a place where me and my friends can just chat shit, be funny, talk about different topics. I know you guys are going to love it, so check that out if you like these sort of topics. We delve into them much deeper there. Links below.
21st century will belong. Our subject, the future of Chinese-American relations.
Markets like China and Russia, and really anywhere else, are very different culturally to domestic American markets. In these markets, it's very easy to sell something like Fast and Furious 92, or Fridge Man, or some cute-looking Pixar film that subtly touches on the desperation of human existence. It's far easier to sell these films to those markets because they're just big, visual, enjoyable films. Easy to dub, and lots of it translates over. One of the main problems with comedy films is that jokes that might land in America might not be funny in different countries.
What are you gonna do today, Napoleon?
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!
It's far harder.
Oh, have we learned that doing this channel?
Bro, right?
Some jokes that land in the US don't land in the UK, and vice versa. If I had a nickel for every time that a joke in a UK TV show or film has quote unquote gone over our heads, we would have retired to Bora Bora by now.
Ooh, right, man. I would have loved that.
Yeah, I love Napoleon Dynamite, by the way.
He's just awesome.
Gosh,
dude, he looks so washed up now, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Stay, Napoleon.
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!
It's far harder to sell American-centric comedies, where the humor often relies on the English language and a Western sense of humor, similar to that incredibly nuanced and culturally layered zinger that I dropped earlier. And then on top of all this, those markets, China and Russia particularly, have very high censorship. Many films that are sold in China have been re-edited to be appropriate for their country. You know, maybe a film shows some LGBT people, or maybe a film's poster shows a black guy too big, just slightly too large. Shrink him down and then we'll buy the film. Or perhaps the film shows a flag that China doesn't like. But then on top of foreign censorship, there is then also the issue of American censorship, aka cancel culture.
Have they made it so dangerous in terms of like being canceled that comedy movies are no longer something you can do?
Everybody knows you never go full.
Recently retired. You are? Yes.
Hey, fuckers! Welcome to the neighborhood. My name is Craig.
The neighbor is a
Dope front lawn here. You and your homeboys can play on that.
You know what? You can just say it looks good.
Right after you suck on these little Chinese nuts. So long, gay boys.
Now, I can't lie, this is a very tired conversation, but it is very important in this story. As many understand, Hollywood is made up of very progressive people. It's a bit of an echo chamber, a hive mind of progressive political views. And a lot of these people don't believe in comedy in the sense of making fun of people who they consider below them. They have this idea of punching up and down, whereby if you're in a position of power societally or culturally, you can't make jokes of people who are below you.
Comedy should punch up. You should never punch down. You should never punch down. Sometimes you've got to punch down. Like if you're beating up a disabled toddler. You know what I mean? And they say it's because, no, we're protecting minorities. Like, they're basically saying minorities haven't got a sense of humor.
Which I personally find a strange attitude. It's sort of saying that I think you're below me. And in lots of communities and culture, comedy is meant to be an equalizer. It brings everyone together so that we can all laugh at ourselves and laugh at each other. So many of the comedies that were very popular in the 2000s and 2010s just couldn't be made now.
So if you're worried about offending people and constantly thinking of that, you are not going to be very creative. So I think it has a disastrous effect.
And this strain of thought...
Yeah. I think that this is a lot to unpack here, and I think we have very strong opinions about it, and I think we should just let loose about it. What do you think?
I think people, and I'm obviously I'm not from the UK. I can only speak for us.
Right.
And I would not mass generalize because this is my opinion. I think that as a whole, we forgot how to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah. And the whole part about trying to market these movies to Russia and China and trying to clean it up for them. Like, really? Like, why can't they make their own stuff?
Because
why do we need to sell to them?
Yeah. Well, money's money. Money's the root of all the evil out there.
Yeah.
You know? So these companies making these movies, pushing them out, they want to make as much money as possible. That's their job.
Right.
And they know what sells over there, what doesn't sell over there. That's their thing. But, you know, I would say it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't, like, I don't know. It's like you can't attack just one layer of this issue, you know, because it's kind of like, who do you blame? Do you blame the Karens at the stand-up show that go crazy, that can't take a joke? Or do you blame, you know, like there's so much that is going into the suffocation of comedy.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, and I don't mind, you know, speaking this stuff out loud. We have the megaphones are now in the hands of those extremists on, you know, both sides of the political spectrum. And as someone that does identify as, you know, center left on a lot of things, this is just one thing I cannot go with them on. Funny is funny.
Yeah.
And the ability to laugh at yourself and others takes a bit of intelligence to do that. And like And that's why the ones that lean right, those I will admit those are that's where the comedy is these days.
It's funny how that shifted too.
Yeah.
That for the longest time that shifted completely.
Yeah, it was the opposite for like 10, 20, 30 years ago.
100%, bro. That's facts. But like it's crazy, man. I just feel like as a whole, it's healthy to be able to laugh at yourself. It's like we can laugh at ourselves and a really actual intelligently written joke.
Yeah.
Like you said, funny is funny. Whether it's simple funny or intelligent funny. I'm going to laugh. I want to laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And he made a very good point about how a lot of Hollywood left people, they say they want to clean it up because they feel like, minorities or, people who are not straight white, like as if they don't have a sense of humor. Like everybody has a sense of humor. What are you talking about?
Like, that's like the most insulting thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And I would say this, it's not even it's like they're elitist instead of want to clean it up. They're like, oh, I'm not going to be the one punching down because that might hurt my cash cow.
Right.
And it's like, F that. Whoever was the first one to be like, oh yeah, no, that's smart. I would love to punch them in the throat. Whoever was like, you know what? No, that's just not my brand. Like,
yeah,
fuck
it's
you.
like Alec Baldwin in what was it, Team America: World Police? Just how he acted throughout the whole thing. I can't stand that. That needs to go.
The Film Actors Guild. Oh God. Oh man, what a movie.
Yeah, man. Movie. Again, link in the description because we reacted to that. In fact, I was the one. I did it on my own. I think you were out of town when it happened. Yeah. Classic effing movie.
Oh my God, that's up there. One of my that's up there with my, I would say, top 5 comedies. Is I would say Tropic Thunder is my number 1. Team America is real close. To number 1. I think they're almost neck and neck. As for me, those are for me that have absolutely I've quoted so much.
Oh yeah.
And then Anchorman is somewhere in there.
Yeah. I all 3 of them, if it wasn't for that Patreon, I wouldn't have seen them. And I'm glad I'm a better person because of them.
Yeah. Oh man.
Y'all comment below your go-to comedy movie.
Yes.
Thought really has dug deep into comedy. Some of the most iconic people of the 2000s and 2010s comedy era have definitely succumbed to this. If you take an example of Judd Apatow, he was the genius of many of these comedies, and he has now completely changed his whole attitude on everything. He went from edgy comedies, edgy jokes, using the word gay as a slur and stuff like that, to now condemning comedians for making jokes that talk about trans people or gay people, etc. And then in what seemed like an act of penance for his previous sins, he made an entire rom-com about a gay couple with a full LGBT cast.
To be Bisexual Awareness Week, and no one has acknowledged it!
Please, guys, don't cancel me. I'm sorry for saying gay.
You're a white suburban kid who's co-opting black culture.
And then also you have Sacha Baron Cohen. He was known for just being edgy and really quite offensive. And so he too kissed the ring by basically took part in public self-flagging where he cancelled himself.
You know what, right? Before anyone else does it, I am officially cancelling myself.
And so with all of this, it leaves us in a really weird spot. And that is modern comedy films. They are kind of shit.
You know, you watch comedies nowadays and you're like, no, this isn't a fucking comedy. You're not. Where's the jokes? Like, where's the bits?
It's bad.
Yeah.
Comedy's gotten kind of bad, huh?
Yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah.
Movie comedy.
With the lack of them being made, the ones that are made, they just always have this thing of like having to make some obvious political message.
This comet is what we call a planet killer.
I say we sit tight and assess.
Why are these men looking at me?
Yeah, they're also staring at me.
Michael Penis! I brought the girl for you.
Comedies these days just can't make non-political jokes. They can't just be funny for the sake of being funny. And so that leaves us with the future. Will comedy return? Is it completely dead? Surprisingly, I don't know the answer to that, but I do have my opinion. I think people do just crave comedy. They always will. You look through history, we've been through wars, etc. No time was too politically and culturally sensitive to have humor. Comedy hasn't disappeared, it's just moved into different avenues. Stand-up, podcasts, also sketch comedy creators on TikTok. You have people like Trevor Wallace, Jack Joseph, Drewski, and many more. The way I see it is I reckon this new wave of comedy podcasts, things like the Joe Rogan Multiverse and Your Mama's House, these podcasts that have now become hubs for comedians, there'll be this competitor to Hollywood, which will be these comedy podcast studios self-funding and releasing films. It's already started happening. And I think that the cultural sensitivity around cancel culture is coming back a bit and people are starting to loosen up. So in my opinion, I don't think it's ever going to return to the dominance that it used to be. But I think it will just become this indie thing that some films will pop off, and that's good. It's good to change. It's good for things to evolve. There is a problem of being too reminiscent of the past. I love the 2000s and the 90s, but comedy has to change. You can't just remake that style. Hopefully all these challenges will force comedians to try new things, take more risks, much like the daring, boundary-pushing joke I delivered at the very start of this video. I'd be very interested in hearing your favorite comedy film of all time, so comment that below. And be sure to join us on the Afters podcast.
All right, cool. Let's end it there.
Well, you know, I feel like I'm definitely an advocate for protecting comedy, even if it's a comedian, let's say, I don't like or don't agree with, or just, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. The fact that they exist is important.
Yeah.
Like that's it's a necessity in culture and in our development. Comedy needs to be protected.
Yeah. Life has gotten even more and more shit these past 50 years. So how are we supposed to make it through?
Yeah.
Like, laughter is a great medicine. It's one of the best medicines.
Yes.
And you made a good point at the end there, is that it's evolved and it's gotten to another place. You know, comedy podcasts, people on TikTok and YouTube. He mentioned I love Trevor Wallace, and I do love, you know, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. You know, Two Bears One Cave, and there's just another comedy one. Shits and Gigs. These two British black dudes, James and Fuhad, that I am really a big fan of. They're really funny as well. And so comedy's still out there. It's just not in the cinema.
Yeah, which, you know, it's a shame. It's a shame. You know, but I feel like as a whole, we'll all start getting tired of not having it around.
Yeah.
And good comedy will present itself again.
Right.
In some way, shape, or form. Like you said, like the other podcasts or whatever. What I'm talking about in cinema, it will show up again.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to that kind of humor, like, no matter where it is, it's like when the creators are making this comedy, they don't know what's not going to be funny in 10 years or 20 years. So like, how can you make a good comedy if you're worried about offending everybody? Like, fuck that shit.
Yeah, just make it funny. Like,
yeah.
My thing is, everything is like, nothing is off limits. Just do it right. Be classy and put the intelligence in the joke.
Right.
You know,
right.
Like, a good bit is a good bit, even if it's super dark humor, which I also love.
Yeah.
But make it funny. There's a good way to deliver it. There's a good way to do it. But that's honestly, for me to say that, I feel like we need comedians out there trying to find that boundary, trying to push that limit, because the closer to that limit, the funnier the comedian.
Exactly.
That's what I've known. Like,
yeah,
reach that, and don't cross it, you know. But as far as you can push it, and you have a golden standard.
Yeah. Or maybe on the contrary, I'm thinking about a quote from George Carlin where he said something along the lines of, the job as a comedian is find where the line is, cross it intentionally, and drag your audience with them and make them glad that you drag them along with them.
Yes. But I mean, he was a masterclass at comedy, though.
Yeah.
Carlin is a legend, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, this generation doesn't have its own legends. That's the issue. Like, I couldn't pick out a new. I just couldn't pick out a new comedian. Every generation has their comedians. Every generation has their like icon for comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the ones that are in my opinion, are doing the damn thing right now are, you know, Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, Shane Gills, Randy Feldface, Trevor Wallace, Michael Blaustein, all are doing phenomenal right now.
Yep.
So that's it's between those right now for me.
It's definitely because we've touched on this subject a lot of times. How, you know, especially on this channel, how like US comedy, UK comedy, how does it differ? You know, and we spent at least, we've thrown 3 videos at that subject. You know? But that's not it. I think it's just comedy as a whole.
Right.
It just needs to be. You can't be so sensitive going to a fucking stand-up gig or watching a comedy movie.
Right,
you know?
right. You're there to laugh, and anything can be funny as long as you know how to construct a joke.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like the people that are always thrive in their feelings crawled out of their basements for some reason this past couple decades. I'm just like, God damn, they just need to go back. They just need to go back in their basements, dude.
Yeah, most people are not at those extremes. Most people are watching on social media. They're not engaging. We're part of the 10% that are posting and sharing our opinions, and we try and put out stuff that is that either makes you laugh or makes you think, and doesn't try and, you know, make you angry.
No. But I mean, it's good to talk about this kind of stuff once in a while because it's so important. You know, we built this channel on music and comedy. As well as all the other things we've reacted to. But still, that's close to us, music and comedy.
Right.
We are always going to support and back comedians regardless.
100%. 100 million %.
Oh man, good video though. Well done.
Yeah, Jimmy the Giant. We're big fans of you around here. Well, I guess in addition to commenting your favorite movie, comment some more Jimmy the Giant to check out, because he has a home on this channel.
Hell yeah.
Yep. Thank you all for watching. Consider subscribing and watching another video. Thank all channel members for your support, and also don't forget that Patreon right down in the description.
For real.
And what now, Dan?
Unplug and go laugh, guys. Jesus.
Exactly. See y'all in the next one.
Later.